over and destroying the invasion. And this time there's 1,000 Muslims, but there are 3,000 of the Meccans, the Quraysh and their allies. So again, it's 3-to-1 odds against the Muslims. And again, they're in a state of worship and he's praying. There's a spiritual turning to God. And the Quran says, بَلَا إِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا وَيَأْتُوكُم مِّن فَوْرِهِمْ هَذَا يُمْدِدْكُمْ رَبُّكُم بِخَمْسَةِ آلَافٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُسَوِّمِينَ. And the Quran says, be patient, be firm. For God promises to you, if they come to you with war, He will assist you with angels, 5,000 of them. 5,000 angels. Now, angels are nice and feel very good, but are they any good at battle? Musawwimin, angels with their targets marked out, the Quran says. And then the Quran says, وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرَى لَكُمْ وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ. And yet God has no need of angels to give you victory. That He only gave you in order to make your hearts at ease, put your minds at ease and make you resolute. بُشْرَى لَكُمْ, as glad tidings. وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ, and that your hearts find some strength. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. For in truth, there is no victory unless it comes from God. He is mighty and He is majestic. This is a lesson that we learned very early on. We're told by year 11 after the Hijrah. Right? The first 12 years, no war. By year 11 after the Hijrah. So now we've come into the last phase of the Prophet's life. He was here for 23 years as a prophet. He becomes messenger of God at the age of 40. He leaves this world at the age of 63. We have something unique happening. 10,000 Muslims go to battle. And that's the largest they've ever been before. And it's called the Battle of Hunain, when all of Arabia decides now is the last opportunity to destroy these people. Because otherwise they've become a huge community. This community of faith, they worship one God. That's terrible news. We have to kill them. And so, and now there are thousands and thousands, more than there ever were before. And the Quran reminds us about this and says, وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ, and recall the day of Hunain. إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ, your vast numbers amazed you. You looked in wonderment and as far as your eye could see. And you thought, back to those early days, we were 313, there were 7 horses. We beat an army of 1,000. The following year, we were 1,000. 3,000 of the enemy on our doorstep, and we beat them and chased them back as well. وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ, today we're 10,000. What could possibly stand in our way today? And then all of a sudden, they faced almost a crushing defeat. Many of the Muslims fell in that battle. And just by the very skin of their teeth were they able to defend now Mecca. But the Quran says to us, وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ, and remember that day, the day of the Battle of Hunain. إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ, your vast numbers filled you with amazement. فَلَمْ تُغْنِ عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا, and then they could do for you nothing. وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ, and the earth, for all of its expansiveness, became constricted to you. ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ, and you were filled with terror. You turned your backs and you fled. ثُمَّ تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ, but then did God turn in mercy to His messenger and to the believers. وَأَنزَلَ جُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا, and with forces that you could not see, He helped you and He gave you victory. But the point of the story is, Jihad was about taking a stand against injustice and aggression, but it was also a battle that was fought in the heavens before it was fought on the earth for believers. And I want to end on this note. Number one, the Quran says to Muslims, in tansurullah, the Quran says, إِن يَنْصُرْكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا غَالِبَ لَكُمْ, if God gives you victory, there is none that can beat you. وَإِن يَخْذُلْكُمْ فَمَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ, but if He abandons you, then who is there that can give you victory after that, after God? وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ, and in God let people of faith put their trust. That's a very interesting thing. It's saying, if God helps you, none can defeat you. But if he abandons you, then there is none that can give you victory thereafter. It's not your numbers. 10,000 at Hunayn meant nothing. It's not your arms, your weaponry, your artillery, your strategic advantage. It's none of these things. Your victory and your defeat. وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. In the heavens is your provision and all that you are promised. From on high are decisions made. And so what determines these decisions then for a Muslim? It's not the idea of taking the law into your own hands and doing what you can. I have a good intention. Maybe if I blow up a bus in Leicester Square and kill some people, then that will somehow avenge the deaths of people in Afghanistan. Well, that logic doesn't work. And it's not good enough to say, well, my heart was in the right place. It is not good enough to say that, because the Prophet said, peace and blessings be upon him, and this is related by Al-Bukhari, it's an authentic hadith. He said, أَلَا مَنْ قَتَلَ مُعَاهِدًا. Anyone that kills a non-Muslim with whom you are in a state of agreement, you have some kind of a treaty, some kind of an agreement, some kind of a covenant, a peace accord in place. Man qatala mu'ahidan. Anyone that kills a non-Muslim with whom you have contracted an agreement. Lam yarih ra'ihat al-jannah. He will not even get to smell the fragrance of paradise. So forget about the 72 virgins. Like, you're so far away. Lam yarih ra'ihat al-jannah. You're not going to get a whiff of heaven. وَإِنَّ رِيحَ الْجَنَّةِ تُوجَدُ مِن مَسِيرَةِ 40 عَامًا. And he said, the Prophet of God said, and indeed the fragrance of paradise, the gardens of paradise, their fragrance can be smelled at a distance of 40 years. That the one who takes the life of a non-Muslim and you have entered into an agreement with them, then you will not smell Jannah from even that distance. Now, who of course is an agreement? I mean, did you guys make an agreement? Did you say we will not kill you or do jihad with you? Well, the Quran makes it very clear that there is the idea of the social contract. If you live among a people, you have an obligation towards them as they have towards you. Remember those 12 years in Mecca. For all of the persecution, for the murder and bloodshed. Muslims need to understand this. Because people sometimes say, well, look at the terrible things that happen. Look at the people who are languishing in prisons. Babar Ahmed extradited to the USA. And all of these terrible things that happen. Surely we can go down to Woolwich and do some madness down there. No, not if you're a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, then do what you want. إن مما أدرك الناس من كلام النبوة الأولى إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت. The messenger said, from the very first of words that people received from prophets was, if you have no shame, do as you please. If you're a Muslim, you're bound by your religion. Now listen to what the Quran says. The Quran says, وَإِنِ اسْتَنْصَرُوكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ. Your brothers in faith, if they are persecuted, and they appeal to you for help. فَعَلَيْكُمُ النَّصْرُ. You are duty bound to go to their help. إِلَّا عَلَىٰ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. Unless it be against a people with whom you have a pre-existing agreement. That is like, think about that. The Quran saying, here's a group of Muslims. You're Muslims, they're Muslims. So you're brothers in the faith. And they are being subjected to persecution and aggression and tyranny by some bad people. The Quran says, go to their help. Go to them and fight for them and help to release them from their suffering, unless you are in some kind of an agreement that you have contracted with their aggressors. Now that is a hard thing to think. And an illustration of this we have. You've heard of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The Muslims come to Mecca, they want to make a pilgrimage. The people of Quraysh say, you're not entering Mecca, but we'll make an agreement, terms of a ceasefire, a cessation of hostilities for a term of 10 years. And here are the terms. And you know, the first of those terms is that any man who leaves your community and comes to us, we will take him and make him one of us. But any believer in you who leaves Mecca and flees to you, you must not accept him. You have to send him back to us. And the Prophet accepts his condition. And people are like, but that's madness. These people, they're members of your ummah. And you are their Prophet. How can you turn members of your ummah back to the kuffar, to the disbelievers, infidel? By the way, no Muslim says infidel, right? Everyone, this whole, we don't say infidel, it's a relic of medieval crusader European language. No one says, let's go and get some infidels, bro. Right? They say, people say kuffar and things like that. But anyway, that's just an aside, just in case we ever have like international law. Before we had such things, really, most nations were in a pretty much constant state of cat and mouse sort of give and take. I mean, England and France. Europe, and Europe's Christian. Europe, even when it was all Roman Catholic, right? When it recognized the Pope, the church in Rome. And yet, any opportunity, there's this country, this nation trying to overtake that, this jostling of powers was what defines the world. And in that world, the Muslim world saw itself as Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. The Muslim world as opposed to enemy territory, any non-Muslim country. Our classical scholars back then, in the medieval warring scenario, they said if a Muslim enters the land of the non-Muslim and he is granted safe passage, he is duty bound not to take from them any of their property or to hurt any of them, the lives of any of their people. For if he enjoys security from them, he owes to them security too. And the Prophet of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I told you about the hadith where he says, anyone that takes the life of a person, you won't smell Jannah. He says in another hadith, أَلَا مَنْ ظَلَمَ مُعَاهِدًا أَوْ انْتَقَصَهُ أَوْ أَخَذَ مَالَهُ مِنْ غَيْرِ طِيبِ نَفْسِهِ. Anyone that oppresses a non-Muslim or takes from him something without his consent, without his free will and permission, or harms him or in any other way, أَنَا حَجِيجُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. I will be his adversary before God on the last day. Your Prophet will stand against you if you were unjust to a non-Muslim. Your Prophet, and that guy doesn't even believe in your Prophet, the victim of your aggression. So in all of these ways, Islam sought to... Now, so what is jihad? Jihad is a struggle that is continual and it is ongoing. And the Prophet said, Al-jihadu madin ila yawm al-qiyamah. Until the last hour, until Judgment Day, you will have to always be in a state of jihad, i.e., you will always have to struggle with your ego, with your passions. The Prophet said that it is for the establishment of justice. And I'm going to end on this note. I'm going to tell you, especially Muslims in the audience, I'd like you to tell me, as I quote something to you, who you think these words might belong to. And that's it, I really am done, because I think I've run out of things to say. Okay. Anyone, وَلِذَلِكَ قِيلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُقِيمُ الدَّوْلَةَ الْعَادِلَةَ. God gives life to a land which is just. وَلَوْ كَانَتْ كَافِرَةً. Even if it is a non-Muslim or a disbelieving community. وَلَا يُقِيمُ الدَّوْلَةَ الظَّالِمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ مُسْلِمَةً. But he will not give life. He will not give continuity. He will not perpetuate an unjust society. It must crumble on itself.